1991. India had enough foreign exchange left to survive for just 2 weeks. The country was on the verge of bankruptcy. Gold was being flown out of India, the economy was collapsing, and the future of over 800 million people hung by a thread. Then, behind closed doors, a handful of people made decisions that would change India's destiny forever. Today's guest wasn't watching history unfold, he was helping write it. For decades, he stood at the center of India's biggest economic decisions, working alongside prime ministers, shaping reforms that transformed the country, and witnessing the conversations that never made it to the headlines. In this conversation, we uncover what really happened during the 1991 crisis, the untold stories of Dr. Manmohan Singh, the politics behind economic reforms, the biggest mistakes India is making today, and the lessons every entrepreneur, policymaker, and young Indian should hear. This isn't just the story of India's economy, it's the story of how a nation rewrote its future. Please welcome Mr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia.
Was there a real possibility that India could have defaulted?
Oh, 100%.
Almost every Indian grew up with one image of Dr. Manmohan Singh, that he was a silent prime minister.
Practically identical to a family that is run out of all option and has to sort of pawn his gold. As he said, if you succeed, we'll share the credit. If you fail, you'll get the blame.
Okay.
And politics usually has economics for breakfast. And I have a suspicion of who actually leaked it.
Who leaked it?
But I don't think I have his permission to use your podcast to say who leaked it. But hopefully one day it'll come out.
You want that some of today's regulation are starting to look like license Raj.
Yes. He has said that 709 of these should be got rid of. Only 109 have been got rid of. Either the bureaucracy that exercises these controls has a very strong vested interest in continuing to exercise them. There's no other reason. So the logical target for Viksit Bharat is that we need 8+%. So in the next 10 years, let's do 9+. Look, India has 16% of the world's population, roughly,
Right.
and 4% of the world's water.
Do you feel that maybe in future we can have water crisis?
We have a water crisis today.
On demonetization, he was very clear. He said it could seriously hurt the economy, right? And even called it as a monumental management failure.
And most politicians underestimate what India can do.
First of all, thank you so much for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you here. I've been genuinely looking forward for this conversation from last 6 months, as you know, right? So, you have worked with some great leaders like Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi ji, P.V. Narasimha Rao ji, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, Dr. Manmohan Singh. So, you have seen governments change, you have seen ideologies change. You have been part of some of the biggest economic decision in independent India's history. So, rather than me introducing you, I would rather hear it from you. Who is Montek Singh when he's not an economist?
First of all, thank you
Yeah.
for inviting me to your podcast. This is the first time that I've been asked to introduce myself. So that's a very innovative decision on your part. No, honestly, I would regard myself as an economist. Came from a kind of a lower middle class type of family. I mean, my father was a clerk in government service. I mean, in British days, that was a good job to have. You had a respectable, either they would call it middle class, but in his generation, he didn't own a car. So that in his generation, the critical thing was, did you own a car or didn't you own a car? He didn't have a car. But, he gave he brought us up to believe, and my mother too, brought us up to believe that, look, we're going to make sure that you get as good an education as we can give you in India. But for the rest, it's going to be up to you. And, I was born just after independence. I I mean, we came across, we were in Delhi, not in Delhi, sorry, in India at the time of partition. So I have no memory
Okay.
of painful things, which many other people in my circumstances would have had. But I mean, we were very aware that the country's now become independent. So that was for us a kind of underlying positive thing, and we generally had a pretty high opinion of our national leaders. I mean, Gandhiji was of course assassinated when I was very young, but then I mean, we had Panditji, we had Vallabhbhai Patel, we had all sorts of other well-known figures, and generally we had a feeling that the country has arrived, independent India, we'll do well, and so on.
Yeah.
It's later on that we became aware of the fact that it's a long road and there are a lot of problems. And I was quite interested in economics because
Okay.
I mean, I didn't want to be a scientist, so I worked towards economics. I got a scholarship which took me to Oxford.
Oh, wow.
At that time, until then, I was doing or planning to do what most people of my generation wanted to do, which is if you want to be in government, you join the IAS.
Yeah.
But by the time I reached Oxford, I realized that there were many other ways of becoming an economist. And in those days, the World Bank was expanding very rapidly.
This is 19?
1966, 7. I finished my undergraduate degree in Oxford in 64 and then joined the postgraduate MPhil degree. So roughly in 1965, the World Bank put out lots of advertisements saying we're expanding, we want some young people. So several people from Oxford, different nationalities, applied, and it looked attractive. I mean, I did very well as an undergraduate, and in fact, I was offered a job by one of these international firms based in London, private sector firms. But I wasn't interested in joining an MNC. I wanted to be in the world of policy making. And I thought going to the World Bank, I'd get a sense of how is policy made in other countries, rather than just go straight into your own government. And I thought that would be a useful way of learning about the world. Kind of a
So how are you so sure that you don't want it to be into MNC and you want it to be into
Well, I
government?
was at that time. I
Okay.
mean, I don't think today. I think for us, remember, we had just become independent.
Yeah.
We didn't have much of a private sector in the country.
Yeah.
The most well-known private sector firm was Tata's.
Tatas.
And when they recruited people, they called it the Tata Administrative Service. So, for a young person, if you have a choice between the Tata Administrative Service or the Indian Administrative Service, the second looks more
Definitely,
attractive.
you'll go for Indian.
And in those
administrative
days,
service, yeah.
there wasn't any sense of a dynamic private sector. That's one thing. Second, I think in those days, and correctly in my view, in those days, there was a perception that if you're going to build India, the government has a big job to do.
Yeah.
You can't take the view
Correct.
that, Ashabhai, we are now going to let the private sector do everything, because nothing much would have happened.
Yeah.
So the attitude towards government was a very positive one. There was none of this feeling that government money just leads to corruption, wastage. All these things happened in due course.
Yeah.
But at that time, the idea was, and if you want to get anything done, I mean, Pandit Nehru's characterization of the big dams as the temples of modern India was a very attractive image. Ke bhai kuch desh ke liye karo.
Yeah.
And a lot of us did that. But by the time I reached Oxford, I mean, first of all, I realized that there were problems in it. It's not as if we were doing all that well. I think we did quite well from the mid-50s to the early 60s. Then I think our performance began to deteriorate, particularly after the India-China war.
Oh, yeah.
And I was aware that other countries seemed to be doing quite well. So I was interested in knowing, but what is happening in the rest of the world?
This is after 1972.
No, I made the decision to join the World Bank in 1968.
68.
Yeah. Remember, in India, we had a severe food shortage in the first half of the 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, we were totally dependent on American wheat.
American, yeah.
And the Americans they gave us wheat, which was generous, but they also sort of pulled their weight and tried to push you here and there. And I think when the Green Revolution happened, M.S. Swaminathan being the principal fellow who led it, and C. Subramaniam behind him as a minister, it was a very major achievement in my perception. You know, in the 60s, there was a lot of feeling around the world that India will never be able to feed itself. I mean, the Club of Rome and all these people,
Oh.
they had said, "Ke bhai, you're wasting your money if you try to help India. They will not be able to feed themselves." Now, you know, since we have a much better global perception of us now,
Yeah.
it's very difficult to remember that. And most people are not aware of this. But at that time, that was a perception that India will be always dependent for food imports. So I think
Okay.
when Swaminathan ended that,
Hmm.
and this was started by Lal Bahadur Shastri,
Hmm.
continued by Mrs. Gandhi, who gave support to M.S. Swaminathan. And by 1968-69, we were producing enough wheat
Yeah.
so that we were able to tail off the imports.
That we can
And
take
that
care
was
of
a very
ourselves.
major
Yeah.
achievement.
Hmm.
So I think, but you know, by then, while that was an important achievement, in terms of industrial growth and all, the whole focus on the public sector was quite visibly not working. And other countries were doing quite well, particularly in Southeast Asia.
So
know,
this is
so-
during your time at World Bank.
Well, it was evident to me when I left Oxford in
Oxford,
1968,
okay.
but the beginnings.
When did you come to India then?
I came to India in 79. I went to the World
79,
Bank in
yeah.
68.
Okay.
I thought I would be
You were there for 10
3
years.
or 4 years.
Okay.
But I met my wife, Isha,
Yeah.
no longer alive, I regret
Yeah.
to say. She was working briefly in the IMF. We decided to get married, then we had a kid. So that slightly delayed the return plan. But you know, she was very determined that she wanted to bring up children in India. I mean, she felt that, and she's right, that you know, you can't have kids in America who spend the first 15 years in America and then tell them to come back to India.
Correct.
So she said, look, we bring them back, give them good education. By all means, let them try and get educated abroad. They can decide where they want to go.
Correct. Right.
But you cannot be an Indian if you haven't been brought up in India. So we said we must come back.
So when you look,
I came
yeah.
back in 79 and I joined the government of India as economic advisor in the finance ministry. And I was much encouraged by Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was then the chief economic advisor and later became secretary in the Ministry of Finance. Isha was very keen on doing research. She didn't want to join the government because she felt that, you know, that's not the way to do independent thinking. And she's right there, or she was right there.
Yeah.
So she went into a research institution. And we both had kind of parallel careers, but not overlapping.
Okay.
You know, she later on got into government,
Yeah.
as a chairperson of a committee and so on. But she was never a paid employee of any government in India.
So when you look back at your own journey, how much of the way you think today was shaped by Dr. Isha, late Dr. Isha?
My journey?
Yeah.
Oh, hugely. I mean, after all, you know, you're in a family. I mean, you know, we were... the biggest thing you do as a family is bring up your children and kind of produce the next generation that's going to replace you. And Isha was she was a working woman, but she was a very hands-on mother. And I mean, in those days, the tradition of fathers was not being hands-on fathers. Plus, I was working in government. So we made only one important decision, that is, after I became senior enough, that I would always come home for lunch.
Okay.
So we would have lunch together as a family and so on. But otherwise, you know, I couldn't come home early. Because in government, you sort of work late, etc.
Correct.
So actually, the bringing up of the children becomes the mother's responsibility.
Yeah.
And to that extent, since the most important thing you're doing together is creating a family and so on, she had a very dominant role. I also feel that, I mean, you know, we were emotionally and socially quite well integrated. I mean, we liked having friends. We liked the same sort of people. So I think she had a big role.
You met her in London. You met her in London.
No.
No?
I met her in the IMF. I
IMF,
came to
okay.
the World Bank.
Okay.
She had gone to MIT. She
Okay.
didn't go to England.
Okay.
She was educated in MIT.
Okay.
She was doing a PhD there. So she came to IMF as a sort of intern. So we met at that time.
Oh,
Basically.
wow. Where do we begin with? Let's. So you have talked about Manmohan Singh. You met him in India only, right?
Yes.
Okay.
After we had come, Ishra and I had come back.
Hmm.
This was a year before we got married. And she got in touch with the guy who was head of department in Khalsa College,
Okay.
Uddham Singh. She taught for a year at Khalsa College before going to MIT to study. And Uddham invited us to a dinner, to which he invited Manmohan, who was then a professor. That's when we first met him. But then he moved into the government and would visit Washington, D.C. quite often in his official capacity. And we would meet him there almost every year, twice a year.
Okay.
Invited home and so on. So we got to know him. And he was very much instrumental in telling me that there's a vacancy coming up for economic advisor in the finance ministry. Why don't you apply? And so on. And I kind of viewed him as a role model because, he had been educated as an economist. He had worked for a couple of years in the UN, come back to India,
Correct.
and basically was doing exactly what I thought I would like to do.
What you wanted to do.
Yeah, exactly.
I think so. You know him very well. I think you have been with him for a long time, and almost every Indian grew up with one image of Dr. Manmohan Singh, that he was a silent prime minister. But the more you read about him, the more you realize that it was not a true story. He was always meeting journalists. He was always answering questions during his foreign trip. And he was not someone who was avoiding media. So where did this silent prime minister image came from?
Well, that's, political images are always manufactured. But I tell you, I was asked by the Prime Minister's Memorial Museum and Library to give the lecture on Dr. Manmohan Singh. So I think since I did know him for a very, very long time,
yeah.
I'll just, if you're interested, I'll send it to you.
Please.
If you give me your email address.
Yes, I will.
I've just sent it to them after editing it and so on. And that'll give you a sense. But he was, as you say, he was perhaps one of the most forthcoming people who explained what he was doing, both to the public and in Parliament.
Yeah.
Particularly, not just, certainly when he didn't do that much of it as a civil servant, because in that time, civil servants didn't interact very much in public. But certainly when he became finance minister, he did that very extensively.
Yeah.
And he was very good at it. And he would do it not only in Parliament, but he would invite people, groups of people to his own office, etc., etc. I think the silence may have come, that image may have come during the last 2 or 3 years of the UPA government. I remember
13-12.
Well, yeah, let's say from 2011 onwards, okay?
Onwards, yeah.
Which is now 20, whatever it is, how much? About 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So you would have been roughly 8 years old at that time, right?
Correct.
Earlier memories.
Yeah.
And because there were all these allegations of corruption, and people were constantly, these are not things where you make allegations that you expect someone to respond. Although the truth is, on all these issues, he had several press conferences.
Yeah.
I think he had more press conferences than almost any
Prime Minister. Yeah.
And he would always raise all these issues. In fact, I remember at one point, because he was aware that people wanted to have answers. And, a lot of these allegations, in our system, the legal process is so slow.
Yeah.
That the most famous one related to the telecom controversy, the 2G allocation, which the telecom ministry and the finance ministry together had done. And it went to court. It took 6 years for the court to give a judgment. The then minister, A. Raja, was actually arrested, okay? And the judge, Saini, a very good CBI judge, finally cleared him as late as 2017 or something like that, long after the UPA government was over,
Yeah.
saying there's not a shred of evidence behind the allegation.
Behind the allegation,
But
yeah.
by the time that happens, there's nothing, nobody remembers this fact.
Yeah.
While the Manmohan's view on all these matters is that while a case is proceeding, you say what you have to say in court. You don't
Exactly.
you don't kind of do that in press
In press
conferences.
conferences, yeah.
ठीक है. I mean, I think if you make a judgment about how much he spoke and tried to explain his position, it would come out he did a lot. In fact, towards the very end of his prime ministership, he called a meeting of top editors.
Okay.
Okay, and a lot of these guys came and asked questions and so
Yeah.
on. And I think at that point, he made this very famous statement that the press in future will be kinder to me
Yeah.
than it is being right now.
Correct. Exactly.
And he was right. I
He was
think,
right.
you know.
He was absolutely right.
Yeah.
But do you think he believed his work should speak louder than his words?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, he was I have described him after he passed away
Yeah.
as a karma yogi.
Karma yogi.
You
Exactly.
know, I mean, he said, look, just he almost never projected himself.
Never. Yeah.
Part of the thing, the most important things he was doing were as finance minister when he actually made history.
Yeah.
1991 reforms.
Reforms. Yeah.
He wouldn't want to make it look as if he was the architect. After
Yeah.
all, there was a prime minister who was backing him, Narasimha
PV
Rao.
Narasimha
And
Rao, yeah.
Narasimha Rao did back him. I mean,
Yeah.
let's be clear.
Yeah.
Manmohan himself frequently said that, look, if you like what I did in 1991, please be sure that without Narasimha Rao's backing, I
It
would
was
not have been
possible.
able to do anything.
Yeah.
So he was never projecting himself.
I mean, there's a lot of talk about 1991 reforms. Some people said it was PV Narasimha Rao political courage. Some said it was Dr. Manmohan Singh economic vision. But you have seen it all, right?
Well, I mean, I'm one of the people.
So,
yeah.
I want to know what role did Prime Minister Narasimha Rao play? What role did Dr. Manmohan Singh play? And where were you in this entire process?
Well, I'm the least important in this discussion. Have you read my book, Backstage?
Yes. 3 days
I think
back.
it gives a very detailed account of my perception. You know, the thing about history is you must always rewrite it, and all over the world that's happening. And I'm sure that there'll be other perceptions. But let me give you mine.
Yeah.
I think when Narasimha Rao came in, it was the worst crisis this country has ever had.
Correct.
Because for 2 years before that, we had political instability. You know, the problem on the balance of payments actually began during Rajiv Gandhi's
Gandhi,
last year.
Yeah.
I was then special secretary in Rajiv Gandhi's office, okay? So we knew there was a problem and we were briefing him constantly. And in fact, the managing director of the IMF, Michel Kamdessu, he had visited India on a regular visit. And he had told Mr. Gandhi that, look, we're concerned about these things and you want to watch out. He did say that, I know an election is coming, so you may not be able to do anything until after the election, but please give this top priority, okay? And Rajiv Gandhi said to me at that time that, look, remind me after the election that we must look at this. Of course, he didn't win in the election. He missed a majority, but he was quite a decent guy. I mean, he had 197 votes. And instead of trying to manipulate himself by getting others to support him, he took the view, quite rightly, that, listen, the public has voted that we should be in the opposition. So let the other fellows do whatever they have to do. And a ragtag coalition was set up under VP Singh. That ran into all kinds of problems. The Mandal Commission, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, oil prices went up, balance of payments in bad shape. Domestically, in response to the Mandal Commission, the Rath Yatra was started by the BJP. That created a sense of political uncertainty.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're having a balance of payments problem and there's domestic political uncertainty, you're bound to get a loss of confidence.
Correct.
So that
There's going to be
worsened the
crisis.
situation. Yeah.
Right.
He resigned in November. he had been briefed that we're going to do something. But, he was completely overwhelmed by all these day-to-day problems. Chandrasekhar was in no position to take any decisive steps because he had very few people. He was just being backed from outside by the Congress party.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had a first-class crisis building up. Then you had an election. Then in the middle of that election, Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated.
Yeah.
And the Congress party got together and they ended up saying, let's bring Narasimha Rao in,
Yeah.
who had not actually stood for the election because he was planning to retire.
Yeah.
But since he was a person of high standing and so on, bring him in. Narasimha Rao was clearly told that, look, this is a fantastic crisis. It could explode. You may default on your debt, which would be a terrible blur on your reputation as India. And you better bring in a technocrat who understands finance and also someone who would carry credibility internationally. Because you're restoring confidence, the rest of the world has to believe that you know what you're doing. So he got Manmohan Singh. He chose Manmohan Singh. He had some options. Chose Manmohan Singh. And Manmohan Singh himself told me that when he said, you be finance minister, Manmohan said, look, we know what to do. But be clear about one thing. If we want to set this right, I will have to do some things which will be politically very difficult for you.
Okay.
And Narasimha Rao said to him, you leave that to me.
Okay.
I'll handle the politics. You do what you have to do. And he then said this wonderful phrase. He said, if you succeed, we'll share the credit. If you fail, you'll get the blame.
Okay.
That's a very fair, I think that's a very fair division.
So in this whole situation, the politics was not coming into economics.
Well, no, wait a minute. The I've said in my book, Backstage, that you can never separate the two.
Okay.
And politics usually has economics for breakfast. That's a phrase I've used, I'm fond of. What Narasimha Rao was saying is, look, there is, without the political resolution, you can't do it, but leave that to me. You operate the way a technician would operate. So when people ask me who's the architect of the economic reforms, I kind of view it a little bit like asking who's the architect of, say, the Taj Mahal. There was an architect who actually did the technical work of designing the Taj Mahal.
Correct.
But in a way, you say Shah Jahan was the guy who got it made. So that's the sort of relation. I mean, I don't think Narasimha Rao would have understood the complexity of what needed to be done.
Correct.
But one thing is very clear. Narasimha Rao, I think, was ready to depart from the old-fashioned Nehruvian socialism, which the rest of the Congress party was not willing to depart.
1991 reforms were the biggest step.
Well, I think
India's
they are a major break.
Yeah.
I think post-independence, Panditji is the one to whom, and his colleagues also, I mean, Netaji and all these chaps, the idea was the state must play a very active role. Okay? Unfortunately, I think the way the state got involved with completely suppressing private initiative and introduced a system of control which was totally excessive and gave power to both politicians and bureaucrats, which allowed them to interfere in the economy in areas where they had no knowledge whatsoever. And that's why the Indian economy did quite well in the first few years after independence. But then it slowed down. And by the time the crisis happened, it had begun to improve. I mean, Rajiv Gandhi had a very clear idea that we must liberalize, but he wasn't able to do it.
He was not able to do it, yeah.
You know, and therefore 91 is the first solid signal that India is saying we're getting out of all this stuff and we're going to do a new round. It wasn't, I want to emphasize, it wasn't a kind of mad drive to the market. It's a recognition that we are putting too much control over the private sector. We're not able to give them the freedom they need for initiative. But of course, the government will be there. Lots of things to be done, infrastructure, looking after the poor, agriculture, etc., etc.
So one thing first is, we all have heard that India was on the verge of bankruptcy.
It was.
So how serious that situation was? I mean, was there a real possibility that India could have defaulted?
Oh, 100%. I mean, let's put it this way.
Okay.
It was so serious that the previous government, and this is to the credit of Chandrasekhar, the previous government, recognizing that they were not able to negotiate a deal with the
IMF, yeah.
Decided to send gold held by the Reserve Bank to London.
UK and
That's interesting.
Switzerland.
London, originally what they were saying was, they asked the Bank of England that, look, we'll pledge our gold, so you give us the money. And we'll treat this gold, will remain in our vaults, but we'll put a little sticker saying this belongs to the Bank of England.
Bank of England.
The Bank of England was not prepared to accept that. The Bank of England said, look, if you want to do that, you bring the gold to London. And actually, the IMF also had a very small stock of gold. The IMF has gold holdings, and they hold it in different countries. They also had a small stock. The officials of the IMF advised Michel Camdessou that, look, the British are saying that, you're pledging the gold, but you better bring it there. So there's a bit of uncertainty. Don't you think we should move the IMF gold to London? And Camdessou said, I don't agree with that, because I don't want to create an impression that we think India is going to default. Which was a very good gesture on his part, right?
Yeah,
but
right.
the Bank of England was not prepared to give you money against your gold unless you move the gold there.
Unless you move the gold there.
What I mean, it's practically identical to a family that is run out of all option and has to sort of pawn his gold. That's how bad it was.
I'm really curious. Why do democracies usually wait for crisis before taking any difficult decision?
No, I don't think that's true. And I mean, it varies.
See, because why I'm asking this, let's go back. Let's go before 1991. Let's talk about M document.
Yes, that's 1990.
1990.
1 year, yeah.
Yeah. You were already prepared with all of this. You have already submitted M document to the government. So let's talk about M document. What was M document first for our viewers? Because I'm not sure. A lot of people they are not aware of M document.
Well, I mean, since you ask about it, I'm happy to clue you in.
Yeah.
The beginning, the original purpose of the M document was towards the end of 1989, when Rajiv Gandhi was preparing for the election. It was B.G. Deshmukh, who was his principal secretary, and I were having a discussion. And B.G. Deshmukh said to me, we've done a few liberalizations, which we had done, but it's not having the effect on the economy that we had wanted. And why is that? And I said, that's because the way we do this is all very piecemeal. So we go to one ministry and say, isko liberalize kar do. Go to another ministry, usko liberalize kar do. But actually what you need is a system change. Because you need to change in many different dimensions in a manner that is mutually supportive, okay? And that we have never done. So he says, why don't you write a note on what we should do, and we'll give it to Rajiv if he comes back. I mean, we were both in his office, so he assumed that he'd come back. So I started doing it. Then, of course, the election, he wasn't there, so that pending. And when VP Singh came back, I mean, he knew both B.G. Deshmukh and me.
Yeah.
And I was quite surprised that he kept us. I said to B.G. Deshmukh that this is one thing a new prime minister always sends people that were under the previous prime minister to other offices. I mean,
they're their own people.
They can get good positions, but he wants to have a fresh. VP Singh had worked with both of us. He decided, no, I don't need a change.
Okay.
So you stay. So I said to B.G. Deshmukh, isn't this surprising? And B.G. Deshmukh said to me, देखो Montek, he said, दिल्ली ऐसा शहर है जहाँ कप बदलते हैं लेकिन चमचे नहीं बदलते. This is the senior most civil servant in the government describing himself and me as chamcha.
कप बदलते चमचे नहीं बदलते. Wow.
I think it gives you an idea of the importance of some continuity. Obviously, you need a new, fresh look at government, but the civil service continuity stays on. I thought it was a rather charming way of and very, very sort of downplaying his own role and our role, I guess. But the important thing is that I went with VP Singh to Malaysia for some international conference. And you know, when you go with a prime minister to these international conferences, you get an opportunity to talk informally, which you would never do at home.
Yeah.
Because there are only 2 of us there or 3 of us that had access to him. So he was sitting in his office looking out of the big glass window at the rest of Kuala Lumpur. And he said to me, you know, Montek, I used to come here in 1973 as Deputy Minister for Commerce. And this place has really changed tremendously. And we have not. So I said to him, you know, I have exactly the same impression because I came here in 1973 for the World Bank and it has transformed. So he said to me, why is it that they've been able to do that? And I said, that's because they did economic reforms and we're stuck. We're not changing anything. So he said, you do me a note on what we need to do. So direct order from the Prime Minister.
From the Prime
I said,
Minister's
yes,
office.
sir, within 3 days because I was already working on that. So the so-called M document originated from that. I did this note and sent it to VP. Now, you know, I thought he might just sort of sit on it or do nothing. He didn't really have the ability to make big changes. But he could have killed it by just sitting on it. I mean, he could have said, हाँ वो बहुत interesting है, देखेंगे अगर chance मिला. But you know, he sent it to the cabinet secretary, that's Vinod Pandey, and said, have this discussed amongst the different ministries. And it said on it, Prime Minister's office. It didn't have my name.
Acha, okay.
So, you know, I mean, you don't note to the Prime Minister, you don't sign it.
Correct.
I mean, there would have been a covering note from me to the PM saying, as PM had required, I've done this note which is placed below.
But it's a secret document, right? It's a
Yes. Well, all these, government, everything is secret. Yeah, it was marked secret.
How did it got leaked?
Yeah, I'll tell you. That's an interesting story also.
Yeah.
It was sent to the Cabinet Secretary's office. Now, interestingly, it was discussed in 2 separate settings for 2 hours. Okay, all the different ministries expressed their view. Not all of them wanted to make the change, but I was very heartened by the fact that some ministries did want to make change. Amarnath Verma, for example, who later on became secretary to Narasimha Rao in the Prime Minister's office, he was one of the people who supported what I was saying. हाँ बिल्कुल ठीक है ये करना चाहिए. You know? Many others said no, it's too difficult, too complicated, whatever. Then the document was leaked to the press, and the interesting thing is that the first page of that document, which was marked secret, had a serial number because it had been sent to every ministry. Okay, and so whoever leaked it, if they had leaked it with the front page, people would have known which ministry is the source of the leak. So it pulled off the front page. And what was printed, the Indian Express printed the whole thing, but the first 2 paragraphs are missing, so it starts quite suddenly. Well, I mean, I have a suspicion of who actually leaked it, but...
Tell us who leaked it.
Well, I think you should, not from the PM's office, but somebody who got access to it from one of the ministries decided to leak it. I think it's good if somebody brings that out, but I don't want to be I only discovered this 5 days ago.
Oh.
Because somebody told me, do you know who leaked the M document?
This is the best platform right now, sir.
Yeah. So I said, well, I don't know. And he said, well, you know, I was told by X that I leaked it. So that was a wonderful story. But I don't think I have his permission to use your podcast to say who leaked it. But hopefully one day it'll come out. But the important thing is it was leaked. And it led to a lot of very important economists commenting on it. 2 or 3 days, the Indian Express carried comments. And I was very heartened by the fact that many comments were positive.
Yeah.
Some were negative. Generally, the left was very negative.
Yeah.
Many of the others were positive. And I think it got called the M document because Ashok Desai, who was then writing for one of the newspapers, Telegraph or something like that, Ashok Desai said, well, this is quite a good paper. Maybe the government should leak its papers more often. Okay? And then he said, well, it's widely being rumored that was written by Montek
Montek.
Ahluwalia, but he doesn't admit it.
Okay.
So let's just call it the M document.
But why didn't
So-
you admit it? Why didn't you admit it that it was written?
No,
by
but
you?
in government, you don't project yourself.
Hmm.
And since it didn't have my name on it, see, the interesting thing about the document was, of course, I wrote it, that's not important. Many people had the same thoughts. What is important is that VP Singh, instead of just sitting on it,
Yeah.
sent it to the cabinet secretary for discussion.
Hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, that if it went out to 50 ministries,
Hmm.
they would have assumed that somebody or the other would leak it in due course.
Correct.
I think VP was not unsympathetic
Hmm.
to what I was saying. Politically, he didn't want to get the attack for doing it,
Yeah.
but he wanted it aired.
Hmm.
Otherwise, he could have just killed it, and he didn't.
Correct.
Then, of course, by the time 1 year later, we were in the middle of a first-rate crisis. So all this was known to all the key people, that there is this thing called the
M document.
And Dr. Manmohan Singh himself later on said
Hmm.
that he had read it and he was aware of it.
Hmm.
So, I mean, a lot of what got done is along those lines. But I want to emphasize, by the way, that, what I said is not very different from what I had discussed with Dr. Manmohan
Manmohan
Singh.
Singh.
And I know that his thinking was the same.
Same, yeah.
So we've always had thinking from within, and I think we need to bring it out more often.
But what made you start thinking so differently?
I didn't start thinking more. I've been thinking this for several years. Look, when I came back to India, just before I returned, I had written a piece in a seminar
Okay.
saying that the problem in India is that we are following the wrong policies.
Hmm.
Then I joined the government of India. Once I joined the government of India, I'm not supposed to be writing under my own name in newspapers, but internally, I made no secret that this is the way we want to go. And in the discussions I had in various committee meetings and all the rest of it, I was aware that there were many people who were willing to say that, yes, we should do this rethinking. Personally, I think it should have happened earlier. But, in a way, it happened. The need for change was acknowledged by Rajiv Gandhi.
Rajiv Gandhi, yeah.
In 1985, Rajiv Gandhi spoke in one of his first statements as Prime Minister in Parliament. And he said that, how can we be competitive? He's first Prime Minister to talk about competitiveness.
Competitive, yeah.
How can we be competitive if we are working with systems which are 25 years
old.
out of date?
Yeah.
And he was the first Prime Minister to acknowledge that there's something wrong with our
So
systems.
with our system.
I mean, the usual argument was, भाई मैं तो कह रहा हूँ competitive commerce ministry नहीं कर रही या industry ministry नहीं कर रही. He said the system's wrong. Okay? And he was himself quite well tutored by L.K. Jha. Because when I was in his office, L.K. Jha was his super economic
Who is
advisor.
LK? I'm sorry.
There you are. You see, you don't even know who.
Yeah.
L.K. Jha was a very senior Indian civil service guy who
Okay.
once became governor of the Reserve Bank. He was also our ambassador in Washington, D.C. When he came back, he was given the position with economic rank of economic advisor to the Prime Minister. So he used to
Okay.
sit and send notes to the Prime Minister, and I would process those notes, and when LK would come to meet Rajiv, I would be sitting there and the two would have a discussion. And at one point, I remember, I've said this in backstage, that, Prime Minister said, LK Saab, you keep saying we should do this liberalization and all that, and I've done several. But the economy is not moving the way I wanted it to. And LK made this point. He said that, sir, the Indian economy is a vehicle which has several brakes, all fully pressed down. Lifting one or two will not make a
will
difference.
not make a difference.
You have to do a whole lot more. And so the basic idea that you need to think of liberalization as a package which unleashes activity was there. So I just put it in this document.
Ham document.
And I think part of the problem, I think it reflects very substantively that we make a big mistake when we leave it to ministries to find solutions. Because, in the Indian government system, every ministry is responsible for certain instruments, and other
Then
instruments.
how do you do it, sir?
I think you should have a policy making, and I don't mean interministerial, I mean a cross ministerial policy making group
Okay.
which would make recommendations. That group was meant to be the Planning Commission. But unfortunately, the Planning Commission, ideologically, historically, was too much into the kind of control orientation. Look, when I did the M document, the Planning Commission's comment in the Committee of Secretaries was, why is the Prime Minister's office circulating this when it is our job
When it is our job
to
yeah.
make policy? But they never circulated anything comparable,
Today's politics has become personality driven. Leaders are expected to constantly communicate and explain themselves and shape the narrative. How is it different from 15 years back during the time of P.V. Narasimha Rao, Manmohan Singh ji?
Well, I think one of the big differences, those were coalition governments. And, if you're running a coalition government, there's a natural tendency to look to see if you can accommodate different points of view and present a consensus. When you don't have a coalition government, that's not necessary.
Okay.
I mean, the government commands a majority. That doesn't mean there shouldn't be discussion, but a lot of the discussion should then take place within the government, between the government and business, and so on and so on. But the compulsion to consult is much greater, obviously, if you're running a coalition government.
Because Dr. Manmohan Singh almost did the opposite
Meaning?
compared to when we see today's government, the government in power. There's a different narrative in front of media.
Okay.
Don't you think so?
Well, I know what it was during Dr. Manmohan Singh's time. I mean, he personally believed also. I believe even if he had a majority and if he had a press that was criticizing him, he believed very strongly that you must engage with the press. Okay. Now the world has changed and the role of the press has changed.
What was he actually like inside meetings?
Oh, extremely communicative and extremely willing to get people to talk. He was a professor, and I believe, I don't know if I've said this before, I think I have. As a professor, it's your job to educate students, not just the brightest student who understands everything, but even the students who don't understand. And you have to persuade them in a way in which they don't feel that you think they're stupid. So I think he had a natural tendency, when somebody raised a question, that he would say, it's a legitimate question, and how do I persuade him that I'm right? I think the best example of this I can give you is, in those days, now somebody your age will not even begin to believe that in 1993, we wanted the public sector banks to computerize. Okay? Rajiv Gandhi was a great believer in computerization, and he had been pushing it. We wanted the banks, and he did it a little bit in government, not much, a little bit. The big question was, can the banks computerize? In those days, if you entered into a bank and your name was Thakur, and you went to a ledger, a teller, you had to go to number 7 because he had the
manually
books for, P to T or something like that. All this should be in the computer. All manual. So computerized. Bank unions were totally opposed because they said that no, this will reduce employment.
Okay.
So Dr. Rangarajan, as deputy governor, had negotiated some settlement with them. And the settlement was that, no, let us computerize. But I'll tell you what, we limit the number of transactions that each teller can do
Okay.
per day. Even if under computerization, he could do 10 times that much, so that there's no impact on employment. His belief was that once these guys realize that it's not so terrible, they'll themselves become in favor. So here the idea was, let's computerize the whole thing. And the bank unions were totally opposed to it. And when I say unions, they were communist unions, Congress unions,
Okay.
BJP unions, other party unions.
The
All
left
of them.
also? Left also.
Left, communists,
Communists, yeah.
CPI,
Yeah.
CPM, all of them. So Dr. Manmohan Singh, as finance minister, said, let's call all the union leaders for a discussion. Okay.
Oh.
In his room.
Hmm.
So I was Secretary Economic Affairs, so I was there. So he called the top 10 guys, each one representing a union that was affiliated to different parties, and all of them were opposed. This is one thing on which they were all unanimous, no computerization. So Dr. Singh told them that, listen, you are all great supporters of public sector banks. Okay, the world is computerizing. The private sector is computerizing. We have foreign banks. We have private banks. If the banks private and foreign banks computerize, public sector banks don't, the market share of public sector banks will reduce and people will go to the others.
Exactly.
So you really want the public sector to do well, you better allow this to computerization to happen. They said no. So then he said, I give you a guarantee that nobody will be fired. That is, we will not fire anyone. But you know what the union leaders said? They said, no, I know what you're going to do, because you will not fire anybody, but then you won't expand employment because you'll have surplus labor. You won't fire them, but for the next 10 years, there'll be no expansion.
No expansion, yeah.
And Manmohan then said that, listen, computerization is an essential part of a banking service. Anyway, the big discussion, none of them agreed.
Okay.
But he talked to each one. And at the end of the meeting, when the meeting ended, normally the finance minister would say goodbye, and he'd go to his desk at the other end, and I would show these guys out. But being a very polite sort of person, he himself went to the door and said, I want to shake hands with all of them. So, they had been very aggressive, but they were quite touched. Okay, nice man. Everyone shook hands.
That's very empathetic.
Well, but the interesting thing is this part of the story, that one of them, who was generally the most aggressive, he said, thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, Finance Minister. I want to tell you that I completely disagree with you. But then he added, but I think I must tell you, my son agrees with you. I think it's a very nice acknowledgement.
Correct.
That, listen, we're not stupid. We know the world is changing. But we have our job to do. You have your job to do. We're not going to change our mind. But aapne jo karna hai, karo. But deep down, the guy was telling him that my son thinks you're right. And somehow change has to be brought about this way.
But why is it so hard to accept the change?
Well, I'm glad that you, at the age of 28, think so, because quite honestly, unless people your age think like that, it won't happen. But the fact is, older people tend not to. I mean, look, if you had put open the question of allowing taxis or not in Delhi in 1950, when there were hardly any taxis and only Tongas used to be used, the Tonga walas would have absolutely opposed the idea of taxis. Because hamara dhanda band ho jayega. And they would not have thought that Delhi's commerce will never expand if the transport system is run by Tongas and not taxis. And actually what happened is probably the sons of all the Tongawalas became taxi drivers. Somehow politicians have to recognize that, we talk today about Viksit Bharat, which is good. I mean, I think we need that kind of vision. But Viksit Bharat is not going to happen if everybody keeps doing what they're doing. And we've seen this change in so many areas. Forget about banking, telecom. I mean, today, moderately poor people can afford a phone. Whereas when the telecom revolution happened, Sam Petroda spent a lot of time, Rajiv Gandhi spent a lot of time
Correct.
persuading people that telephone is not a luxury.
Yeah. It's
It's a luxury because we made it
We
scarce.
made it
Only the
scarce,
rich
yeah,
people can
correct.
have telephones.
Correct. In fact, you have talked about this very strongly in your book Backstage.
Yeah, you
About
should
the-
popularize my book. I think, most
Yeah.
younger people do not realize that we must make sure that that kind of control system doesn't get recreated. Because the tendency will be very strong to recreate it. There is no bureaucrat that I know of who actually believes that making what he does redundant is the sign of success. And not that the bureaucrat will be fired, but he should be doing different things. What he was doing earlier is actually quite redundant.
I mean, what has been done earlier, maybe that's not going to work now.
Yes, exactly.
You have to come up with something new.
I'm not even sure it worked then.
Okay.
I mean, let's face it. Why did the Indian system decide to reserve steel for the public sector? That's what in 1951 or whatever, 56, the Industrial Policy Resolution, they made a list of industries which they reserved for the public sector.
Public
right?
sector,
Because they're very important. It's fine. Industry is very important. That's good. You believe the private sector is not going to invest and you want to push public, that's also fine. But if you find the private sector is investment, why do you want to push public sector? And if you look at the history of steel, the Indian steel industry started with Tatas.
Correct.
And Tatas went to the Angrez who were ruling and said, we want to set up a steel mill. And the guy who had to give them permission gave them permission because he didn't think they could do it.
Yeah.
In fact, the Englishman at the time said, if you produce steel, I will eat every kg of steel you produce.
Oh,
And
really?
within 10 years, the Tatas were selling steel to Australia.
Australia. Yeah.
So, our own history should have told our policy makers that the decision to reserve steel for the public sector was fundamentally wrong.
Correct.
Why do we do it? And it's not that there weren't people in the Congress party who were saying that. I mean, after all, Rajaji, Rajgopalachari,
Rajgopal Singh.
he was a staunch congressman, okay? He was India's first governor general. I mean, after him, after the constitution was adopted, Rajendra Prasad became president, but Rajaji was governor general after Mountbatten. So very leading Congress guy. In 1956, he left the Congress party. And why? He left the Congress party because we were going too much into controls. And he said, we didn't get independence from the British Raj in order to become subject to a license permit Raj. That phrase, license permit Raj, comes from Rajaji. And this is 1956.
1956.
Now,
Interesting.
I went to college in St. Stephen's College in 1960, doing economics.
Yeah.
Nobody told me this. We had the second plan, which was published in 1956. In those days, Panditji was very much for consultation. And there was a plan, and then they got a group of distinguished economists who commented on the plan. Now, as it happened, most of them towed the Sarkari line and said, wonderful plan. But there was K.N. Shenoy from Bombay who said, I completely disagree. This is wrong. This is the wrong thing to do. I got my BA honors.
About the liberalization.
No, the plan.
The plan, okay.
The second plan is what brought in this idea that the key parts of the economy should be controlled by the government.
License Raj.
Yes. We were never told that in my lectures, it says the second plan, wonderful, lays the basis for independent India's policy. But we were not told that, when there was a committee, one of the most distinguished economists from Bombay, K.R. Shenoy, had actually said this is wrong.
Okay.
So, we whitewash these things away, and that's why I think these things should be brought back. I mean, look, anyone asking the question, what is the Congress legacy on thinking? It would be very difficult to remove Rajagopalachari from the Congress
From
legacy.
the Congress legacy, yeah.
But we pushed him out. Everything really good that was done has continued. You can argue whether it has been done as well as it should have been, but you don't know whether the earlier regime would have done it as well as
Yeah.
it should have been. I firmly believe that the outcome of what happens in a country is only partly determined by the political leadership. It's determined by the inherent strength and capacity of the country,
Of the country.
its
Yeah.
people, etc., etc. And the capacity of those people is the result of what was done 15 years ago.
Correct.
Second, it depends on policy, not personalities. If you have a wonderful personality but wrong policies,
Wrong
you don't
policy.
get anywhere. Personalities also help because they energize people. And people do need to be energized. And from that point of view, I wouldn't like to say this, that was not Manmohan's strength. Because Manmohan's strength would have been, look, these are good policies and you guys are great people and I have trust in you. Whereas today, what people want is somebody who's going to lead us into a big battle. Okay, I mean, maybe it's a different world. That's a different kind of leadership.
He was not there in front of media. He was not the front face. He was
No,
the
he was
person
he
behind
was
it.
he was always there. He never projected himself
never
as a
projected
leader.
himself,
But
yeah.
I personally feel that projecting as a leader is also you're unduly hinging everything on personality. I mean, for example, the first Indian designed aircraft carrier, I forget the name now, when Vikramaditya or something, when it was released, that had been going on for 20 years, right? It was released with just a picture of the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
I said, why not release it with a picture of the 10 people in the team
In
who
the
designed
team who
it?
designed it. It was with Rajiv Gandhi, I think.
No, it would have started after Rajiv Gandhi.
After
But
Rajiv.
my point is, I'm not saying you put Rajiv Gandhi, but you put there would be somebody who would have been the chief of the 10 departments involved in design.
Who were involved
All
into
of them
that,
should
yeah.
be there, no? However, that's a different matter. Anyway, go ahead, shoot.
Okay. So, in a democracy like India, how do you introduce reforms that affect millions of people?
Well, that's a good. It's both a good and very difficult question,
Yeah.
and I don't want to give you
Because you have seen all of it, be it 1991 reforms. After that, you have seen everything.
Well, but when I look back, if you look at the 91 reforms, I think what happened was that right at the start, we were able to sell a broad idea that, look, India is over-controlled and we must liberalize the private energies. Private doesn't mean the top guys, because the lower guys also need to be liberalized. The job of government should be to create an environment in which Indian enterprise can flourish, okay? This was conceptually very different from the control-oriented regime. The control-oriented regime said there's always entrepreneurship, but left to themselves, these chaps will just engage in chori, and therefore we must have a policeman everywhere. The 91 reform said, no, that's wrong. I mean, if somebody wants to say, I'm producing something, I want an import in order to make it, he's right. We used to have, you can't even imagine how stupid it was. Because in those days, if you wanted to import something, certain things were allowed freely for import. But most things required a license.
200-300% duty, I think.
No, it's not just the duty.
Yeah.
Very often,
I think the electronics was not allowed to import.
yeah,
Computer
I mean,
and laptop.
the argument was you had to explain why do you need it.
Why do you need it? Yeah.
And needed means there were two criteria. One was the criteria of essentiality. In other words, do you really need this thing? The second was indigenous availability. Is it available indigenously? So it could be rejected on the grounds that you don't really need it. It could be rejected on the ground, yes, you need it, but an indigenous option is available. So a businessman was always being told, you want to do something, you need this, no. A bunch of bureaucrats have told you, no, this alternative is available and is just as good. Now, you told me about this fantastic simultaneous knitting machine that you've got. We had a very similar discussion when Maruti was involved. Maruti was given an approval. Okay, but you come, foreign technology and all that. but over time you must indigenize your production.
Yeah.
So they said, right, and the indigenizing meant that you would machine the engine block, okay, inside. You wouldn't be importing the engine block. You'd be machining it, to the right proportion. And they said, yeah, we will do it now. So they said, in order to machine it, I need a superior machine tool. So then some of these guys said, नहीं, HMT से पूछो, can they do it? HMT ने हाँ, कोई ज़रूरत नहीं है import के लिए, हम कर लेंगे.
Indian companies. HMT is Hindustan.
HMT was Hindustan Machine Tools, public sector company. Then the Maruti chap said that, look, I know they have machine tools, but Maruti is operating at a level of sophistication much higher than what they can do. And the chap said, no, this is all nonsense, because Bajaj scooters ki jo engine hai, ban rahe. So this chap said, look here, the difference between a Bajaj scooter engine and a Maruti is not a huge car, but still it's a car.
It's a car. Bajaj
and a
is
very
scooter.
modern car.
Yeah.
And the only reason Maruti got this permission was because it was known that Mrs. Gandhi was
directly
keen
involved.
on supporting Maruti. It was not a private company, it was a public sector. But
yeah.
in her mind, it was connected with Sanjay Gandhi, right? Usne idea start kiya tha. Now it was a public sector company. So you had a fight between two public sector companies. One public sector company says, I have said I will produce an engine block, but to produce an engine block, I need a machine tool, which this fellow cannot produce, but the other HMT guy said, no, I can produce.
I can produce, yeah.
So Tiwari ji was then the minister, N.D. Tiwari. The whole matter went up to N.D. Tiwari because these bureaucrats would not concede. And I mentioned all this in backstage. In fact, you should ask, if your father is interested in this, show him this portion.
Okay.
And the interesting thing was that Bhargav, R.C. Bhargav, who I think was at that time the MD, he's now the chairman of
HMT?
Maruti. No, of Maruti.
Maruti, okay.
So in order to persuade the minister of the strength of their argument, they got an engine block of the West Lambret or whatever Bajaj scooter, put on the table, and 3 or 4 people carried the engine block of a Maruti. And put it next to him. And then he explained to N.D. Tiwari that, sir, they produce a machine tool which can manufacture this. But I want to manufacture this. They have never done this, and I don't want to trust them. And N.D. Tiwari agreed. I have no idea, by the way, whether N.D. Tiwari agreed because he knew that ultimately Maruti would go to Mrs. Gandhi.
Mrs. Gandhi, okay.
But it tells you what a stupid level of interference would be there. And every bureaucrat, every industrialist had to face this problem.
But in government department, if we talk about today time also, it's very normal.
Sorry, what is normal? Stupidity.
No, I'm not talking about stupidity. That the things goes from one department to the other department to the other department.
Yeah.
It is very normal in India.
It's not, that's not the answer. That's not the reason.
Yeah.
Things are being dealt with by people who are not experts. They have never worked in a private company. And therefore, if there's a private sector fellow who wants to do something new, he will never get his idea through. Because it's difficult enough for him even within the private sector if he has an idea that hasn't been tried by some other company. But in government, I mean, a completely new idea, maybe in defense or something it might work. But if you subject industry to this kind of thing, you are guaranteed to produce low quality output. And I think that is what we need to recognize, that how do you reconcile a role for government which doesn't compromise efficiency, quality, technology, and so on.
Then what happened?
Well, in this Maruti case, Bhargav won, and they were allowed to use Japanese machine
imported
tool.
Machine tool.
And you have to ask yourself, where is HMT now? Nowhere.
Nowhere.
I mean, in fact, I remember when we went to Japan, they showed us a fantastic machine tool and showing accuracy because they had a Japanese sword held up in a stand and a robot which picked up a spinning top and
No.
put it on the top of the sword, and the spinning top kept spinning and slid all the way down.
Wow.
So we said that we should get Maruti HMT to tie up with some
With
Japanese
Japanese
company,
company.
Fujitsu or something,
Yeah.
to upgrade its own skills. They weren't interested.
You have talked about in backstage that we have a big ambition today, and we want to be a developed country, Viksit Bharat. But when we listen to you, it feels you are saying that one thing is very clear: we are not moving fast enough. So why do you think that?
There are 2 or 3 numbers that I want to throw out. And I don't want to get into a kind of, the usual tutu mema kind of stuff. The truth is that over the long period, say if you start from the UPA to today, the average growth rate that we've been having is a little over 6%.
6.7, 6%.
6.5, whatever.
Yeah.
Now, you cannot, there's no evidence at the moment of acceleration, okay?
Okay.
Let's say that 6.5, you can also say is not bad. Because at 6.5, we are the fastest growing emerging market economy, okay? That's not bad. But the question you have to ask yourself is, let us agree that we want to be Viksit, okay, by 2047. And you should ask yourself, what do we need to grow at in order to get to Viksit?
2047.
47. And if you have a constant average growth rate, you need something over 8%.
Okay.
So it looks like a simple task that 6.5, 6.6, go 8.
8, correct. But
But remember,
not that easy.
that's not that easy.
Yeah.
That's the difference between the growth rate of the last 20 years and the previous 20 years. So getting a 1% growth rate change or 1.5% requires major reforms. But the honest truth is everybody says we need reforms. I mean, even the Prime Minister has said reform, perform, transform. So the slogan of reforms is accepted. You have to decide now what is it that we need to do. This is where the complexity is. But I want to add one more point. To reach 8+% as an average, as we transcend from being at the bottom of the middle income to the very top, is not going to be done at a constant growth rate.
Okay.
Because if your per capita income is going to go from $2,600 to $13,800, it's going to grow faster to begin with and then slow down. And that happens there. Even China is slowing down.
Correct.
Okay? So the logical target for Viksit Bharat is that we need 8+%.
Okay.
So in the next 10 years, let's do 9+, and then allow us to slow down to
Slow
7.
down a bit.
So really your gap is between 6.5 and 9+.
9+.
That's again not impossible. But only very few countries have done it. Maybe,
Singapore?
earlier,
Singapore.
Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Singapore.
Yeah.
Only these over a long enough period. So you can ask yourself, look here, why can't we? And I think we can. But we can only do it if you say, these are the things we are going to do. And in order to get to Viksit Bharat, we have to do this. Then you need to develop political support for that. And that's not my job. I'm business. I don't know how you build political support. But I think this debate has not shifted from the conceptual to the political level yet.
So if you had to pick 3 areas where India simply cannot afford to move slowly, what would they be?
Actually,
To reach the Viksit Bharat
the
level.
list is very long.
3
But that is
important.
not meant to. It's difficult. This is the reason I'm not giving you a clear answer is that in the set of 10 things that we need to do, you can have different choices about which are the first 3, which are the most important first 3 to do. You can vary it. But I think among the things that we need to recognize, number 1, we're not doing a good enough job on education and also health, okay? And a very important reason for this is that we're not spending enough on education and health, 2 together, And when I say spending, I mean both the center and the states. So who does more and who does less, you can work out. But you need to spend more. However, spending is not enough. You have to improve the quality of the institutions that deliver these services. And there's very little thinking on that, partly because these institutions are dominantly at the state level. And whatever the center may do, in the end, it's the states that will determine how primary health clinics are run, how their district hospitals are run, and so on. In my view, there should be, the government concerned have to provide the resources, and they need to experiment with different ways of doing it. Okay?
So one, education, health.
Those are two.
Okay.
Very good. Infrastructure, everybody agrees, and I think it's happening also.
It is happening.
So that's a good thing, and it should continue and whatever. Now that's one. Number two, a huge problem that we face is water. I mean, look, India has 16% of the world's population, roughly,
Right.
and 4% of the world's water. So in terms of scarcity, this is a natural scarcity. You know, engineers is not a natural scarcity, because if you produce another 20 IITs, if you have the money, you produce a lot of engineers. And if you recruit well so that you have good teachers, they'll be good engineers. But water is not said. Water is a fundamental scarcity. You will only succeed if you economize in the use of water. In order to become a rich country, you will have a lot of industrialization, and that's going to require water. I mean, all this stuff that people talk about, data centers, yevo, the water requirement of this is
it requires
huge.
water. Yeah.
So I think we, by the way, we don't even have a policy framework on how policy towards using water can be rationalized.
There's a lot of talk about water happening right now. So do you feel that maybe in future we can have water crisis?
We have a water crisis today. So what is happening is that, look, it's an automatic thing that, expectations about water and water quality change when you urbanize. If you become Viksit Bharat by, say, 2047, whether it's 2047, 2050 is not that important, but roughly around that period. One thing you can be sure about, the urban population will have to go from what it is, a little over 30%, to something like 65%. When you're in an urban area, the water supply has to be modern, piped, clean, etc. In rural areas, because water is not always polluted, a lot of people rely on water from natural sources. Once they get into the cities, that's not possible. Okay? Therefore, I don't believe there's a single city in the country that has a rational water use plan looking 20 years ahead, which says, by this population is going to increase, therefore we need this much water, therefore we need this much water treatment, this is where the water is going to come from. None of them have it.
Then why government is not doing something about it?
Well, that's a very good question. This is a state government subject. Central government, other than giving them
This
lectures,
is something serious, right?
this is very serious, and what is more, this is, in my view, there's too much talk of cooperative federalism. Cooperative federalism is between the states and the center.
Central, yeah.
Of course, they should cooperate. That's a good thing. I think we also need competitive federalism. Each state competes with the other states.
Like China?
Yes, China does exactly that.
And,
But you now see full-page advertisements. Every time there's a state election, there are a full-page advertisement, CM's photograph, and a list of schemes.
Yeah.
And so much money that we spend. You don't get anything which says, look, over the next 20 years, for our cities, because we are promising you development, cities will grow rapidly. Therefore, city water has to be this much expanded. Therefore, this is what we're doing. All you get is freebies.
Right. There's a big difference because we compare ourselves to China. China के अंदर जो state के mayors होते हैं, they are competing with other state.
Yes, absolutely. When
But
you say
here-
we compare ourselves to China, let's be very clear. I don't think there's anybody who thinks that we are doing better than China.
No, of course
If you
not.
compare, meaning they are doing this, why can't we?
maybe China can be our inspiration. We always look up
Yes,
to
that's
China, right?
No, I think we have more freedom than China.
Yeah.
The fact that we are a democracy is important. Whatever your view on whether the democracy can be better or not, the fact is that in China, the view of the people doesn't count. But everybody judges, are the people happy? And they're doing very well. So if you ask them, they seem to be happy.
So when I was reading backstage, you said something very interesting, that you want that some of today's regulation are starting to look like license Raj.
Yes.
What do you mean by that? I mean,
I'll
yeah.
explain to you. I'm not saying they're repeating, but I'm saying this is a danger. And you have to ask yourself, how will we avoid this danger? Okay? It's quite understandable that we want to produce things in India. I mean, after all, if you're going to have a big GDP, we're going to have a big GDP because we produce these things, okay? Let's take the area of renewable energy, okay? There's no question in my mind that we need to move away from fossil fuels and towards renewable energy. That means solar, that means wind.
Yeah.
It also in the long run means nuclear. If you're going to move into solar and wind, you're going to require a hell of a lot of solar modules, solar panels, batteries in order to even out the unreliables, the variable supply, and so on. And we should plan ahead that when our capacity for solar generation expands as much as it'll have to, then we should be able to produce these solar cells. So already there is an expectation that, we should stimulate solar cells. Now you have a choice. What are you going to do? Our problem is that China has built double the capacity that the world needs.
Correct.
Because they've been highly subsidized by their government.
By the state governments.
And therefore, they are able to sell the stuff much below cost. Okay, we don't have that flexibility.
We don't have that flexibility.
So what is it that we should do? I don't think, by the way, that China is going to keep subsidizing in future. But for the next 10 years, our producers say that we need protection. Okay, and that's fair. So what have they done? First, they've said import duty.
Anti-dumping, import duty.
Not anti-dumping, just plain import duty.
Okay.
Anti-dumping is usually targeted at a particular
Sector.
thing.
Yeah.
They're across the board duty. Okay. The duty, I think, on solar panels and cells is about 40%. Even with that duty, Chinese cells are better than ours. So they've said, no, we must now stop. We must force people who set up solar generating stations to buy only from approved list of domestic manufacturers. That is the license permit, Raj.
Okay.
So if you want to set up a solar generating plant, that's wonderful. You are helping the country. But you please buy from these 6 people. Okay. Now, what happens if you have that, and these 6 people cannot and the Chinese are selling it very cheap, and they are selling it at 50%, 60% above. All your competitors in other countries will be buying Chinese cells, and the cost of electricity for them will be lower.
Lower, yeah.
You, because of your desire that you rely on domestic, now this would not be a problem if we were to do subsidy.
Yeah.
Say, look, I want to have efficient stuff. I don't prevent people from importing. Because tomorrow the Chinese may find a solar cell that is more efficient.
Yeah.
So the logically correct thing to do, in my view, is allow free import. If a chap who's setting up a solar power generating system wants an imported cell or a domestic cell, you want to support the domestic one, give him a subsidy. Now, the moment you don't do that, and you say, no, we'll just force you to go there, you are back into the Maruti story that I told you.
The license Raj.
License Raj. And that's just the start. There are, by the way, other views. One view is that it's not enough to produce a solar cell, because a solar cell is produced by working on a wafer. The wafer should also be produced.
Right.
Now, a wafer is made out of an ingot. So maybe the ingot should also be produced.
Be produced, yeah.
Is that what you want? And if you decide to do that, I have no problem with that at all. If you say at every stage, I'm going to subsidize the domestic, then the user is quite happy. If the moment you move away from subsidy to this license permit Raj, you are back to the 1970s.
But somehow this is helping the domestic manufacturers. Somehow this is helping the small businesses also, right?
No, it's a similar problem. Small businesses will be hurt because the cost of electricity will be higher. Similarly, for example, I mean, in your area, manufacturing, the most important inputs which a small business needs are either petrochemicals or metals, steel, aluminum.
Right.
Okay? If you want to make your MSMEs internationally competitive, duty on these things should be reduced to 3%. It's actually 15%. So the question is why, and the guys producing these are the big guys.
Correct.
Why are these big guys not able to produce stuff which is internationally competitive? And why are we forcing MSMEs? They're the ones that generate employment.
Exactly.
These big guys are highly capital intensive.
Exactly.
And they produce very little employment. The correct thing is cut down the duty on these inputs to 3% or even 5%, let's say. Now, you have to ask yourself the following question. The rupee has depreciated 11%.
Yeah.
Why don't we reduce the inputs on the duty on all inputs by at least that much? Because the depreciation is giving them the same advantage. We haven't done that. So I think this issue of how do you promote domestic production without burdening the domestic user. See, this is not very important if you're talking only about a consumption item. Because let's say, theek hai, cosmetics hai, I mean, theek hai, you're paying more, doesn't matter. But the moment you're talking about a capital good, a machine, or an intermediate good, you are affecting downstream competitive efficiency. And it's very important for them that we don't do that.
In fact, you have talked about in backstage that a weaker rupee can help India's exports.
Yes.
Explain how a weaker rupee can sometime help the economy.
This is going back a little bit to elementary trade theory economics. That let's suppose you have a system, okay? And the domestic producer says, okay, bhai, ye jo imports hain, I can't compete with the foreigners. So you put a 20% duty, okay, on the import. And instead of that, suppose you say, why don't I just weaken the rupee and have a 20% depreciation, okay? If you do that, then the guy who's competing with imports should be just as happy. The exporter, on the other hand, whose costs are in rupees, can sell his stuff 20% cheaper. So it's an elementary sort of principle that an import tax is equivalent to a tax on exports. In other words, if you were to...
Please make us understand in layman's language.
Well, all right. I'm glad you're raising this question. But the way to understand it is that, look, if you were to, as I said, you have two kinds of guys in the country. You have people who are competing against imports. And you have people who are exporting. And the guy who's competing against imports says... that, listen, I can't compete with these imports. I'll have to shut down unless you do something. Okay? Now, one solution is that you impose a duty on the import, let's say 20%. If you impose a duty on the import of 20%, what you're doing is you're allowing the exchange rate to be where it is. There's a duty on this import. So the cost of this import, which is fed into the system, will raise prices, and the exporter will find his cost going up. But with the same exchange rate, so he'll have to bear the cost.
Right.
The other approach is that, look, you think that you can't compete. You need a 20% advantage. I'll depreciate the rupee 20%. That means the import guy, the guy who's producing the import competing good, is helped the same amount. But for the exporter, it's a bonanza. Because he suddenly, two things can happen. He can lower his price by 10%, and he can raise his profit by 10% and reinvest in his business. So exports become much more competitive. The more you avoid a duty and achieve the same result by the exchange rate change, the more you help the exporter versus the importer. Producer.
Interesting.
You're an exporter, so it should apply to you.
We are exporting 20%. We are importing also. We are importing yarn.
Yes, but what's the value of your import compared to your export?
Import value is much higher than the exports.
That's because you're importing for the domestic
for the domestic goods also, no?
Yeah, sure. Okay, fine.
Because the quality what we want, we are not getting it in India.
What is the duty on yarn?
5%.
There you are. If you had to pay the same duty on yarn that the manufacturer has to pay on import of materials, steel, etc., it would be 15%. Think of what will happen to your, profit. I fear that this aspect, it's not widely appreciated or understood by many people in business. In fact, many of them even deny that it helps them, because when you depreciate, the buyer very often says, then you must renegotiate the price.
Yeah.
That is true at that point. But if you're having a policy, the next time you negotiate a price, you will negotiate the proper price, which is competitive with the rest of the world. So you will just sort of say, well, look, I mean, if you had an exchange rate change.
Okay. Let's talk about crude oil. People often say when crude oil was $100 a barrel, petrol price was 60 rupees. But now the crude prices are much lower than that. Why the petrol prices are rising? I mean, is that comparison even fair, or are we comparing two different situations?
Well, the pricing of crude oil is extremely non-transparent. And what you're really saying is that, yes, compared to 100, it's gone down.
Yeah.
Okay? But at 100, the price that was being charged, according to the oil industry, the industry was making a loss.
Okay.
And the reason it was making a loss is that over time, in the past, when crude oil prices fell, the government didn't lower the price, but they raised the duty.
They raised the duty, yeah.
So essentially, that benefit went to the government and not to the consumer.
Not to the consumer.
Now, governments do that very often. I mean, the government could say that, look, we gave so many benefits, they have to be paid for, so we use this as a source of revenue. That's fine. The point at the moment is that you want to make up your mind. Are you willing to let the oil industry make a reasonable profit, whatever that is? And if you want that, otherwise what's happening is that if the oil industry makes a loss, basically they'll invest less. They won't be able to build all the refineries, future refining capacity, and also more importantly, they won't build storage. I mean, the one thing that comes out from the recent experience, India needs much more strategic storage of crude oil, because you can't be sure what will happen in the Strait of Hormuz tomorrow.
Right.
The day after. And we had too little compared to other countries.
So, but this is the question every Indian have right now. Many people feel that whenever global crude oil prices go up, prices increases quickly. Petrol prices increases quickly. But when crude prices comes down, they don't fall by the same amount.
No, that's true, and that's because.
So why does that happen? What's driving the fuel prices?
We have two options here. Option one is free it up to the market, but you can't do that here because most of your producers are public sector. So to call it market is just ridiculous. They just sit with the government and say, "Kya karna hai?" If you want transparency, then it's much better to say that the oil companies will work on this formula, a weighted average of whatever the cost is, plus some refining margin, and this is going to be the price. And that formula, the formula price, should be published every day.
Every day.
Formula price. The actual price can vary because you can't keep changing prices. But like, let's say if I'm a consumer, I should be able to look at my newspaper and say, "Bhai, on the basis of the formula," and the formula would build in what is the tax that you want to impose, whatever it is, right?
Okay.
I think according to the formula, price should be 110 rupees per litre, or actually it's 112, but chalo, these things move around. Within 2 or 3% of the formula, the price doesn't have to be adjusted. I mean, the kind of guys who have cars will not quarrel.
Yeah.
But if it turns out that under the formula it should be 102 and then 103, then they'll adjust the thing accordingly. But it will be transparent. But for that, you have to be very clear what is the tax burden, what is a fair return.
But what if the oil price stay high for a long time? What should India response to be?
I think in these matters, look, oil price, whoever wants to buy oil should pay for it.
So you are saying the consumer should pay for it?
Yes, absolutely.
If the prices are high, then
Yes.
it should go towards the consumer. You're saying that?
If you've got a transparent system in which the tax burden is also known, then if the international price of oil goes up, the consumer should pay a higher price.
Okay.
But equally, if it falls,
Exactly.
no, I agree, but
Exactly.
that calls for If this system had existed earlier, then as the international price was falling in my newspaper, I would read, according to the formula, it should be 65, but it's still 90. And so what would happen is that within 2%, it would not be a problem.
Right, correct.
But if it went beyond 2%, the oil companies would say to the government, "Ke saab, there'll be a protest. Why are we not adjusting?"
But why are we not doing it?
It's because nobody is demanding it.
People are protesting, people are saying.
People are not demand. They are just at any given time, people always want price to be lowered.
Yeah.
And nobody is saying, "Give me a formula, and when it rises, I will live by that. And when it falls, you better live by that." Nobody is saying that. That's what you need. I mean, remember, look, if you want to move people away from petrol to EVs,
Yeah.
today there's a huge demand that EV pe subsidy lagao. No, I mean, frankly, if international petrol prices are rising, that's the biggest subsidy for EVs. It encourages you to go to EVs.
What's your take on ethanol? There's so much talk about ethanol happening right now. What do you think about
I
it?
don't know. When you say talk, what do you mean? I know they're doing
I mean,
some.
there are people are talking about ethanol. Automobile companies are saying that it may hurt the cars.
Yes, that's
ethanol
that's a
blending.
valid point. I mean, look, you cannot. The fact is that ethanol is chemically a potential substitute for petrol.
Right.
It's not as efficient.
Yeah.
So the first thing is that if you buy 1 liter of petrol which has ethanol in it, then you've actually bought less than 1 liter of original petrol.
20% is ethanol.
But
Yeah.
the second thing is that if you raise that percentage, I don't know whether 20 is okay or not, beyond a point it'll hurt the engine. So it's either you have to make the engine with a different material, which will be more expensive.
Yeah.
So in all this, in prices, it's a very simple thing. There is an overwhelming case for A, competition, B, transparency. Okay? And after that, the consumer should either pay what the price is or not, or just refrain. But if a person is very poor, then there's a case for helping that person. But that person should be helped by a straight cash transfer, not by giving petrol cheap and giving something else cheap. That's all nonsense, I think. Nobody's thinking about this. And they're not thinking about this for the simple reason that logically, what this would mean is that, look, we have to recognize that the market economy doesn't always generate a fair distribution of income. Okay? And as a society, as people concerned about our population, we don't want any Indian to fall below a certain level. So if you're below a certain level, then you need income support.
Income support, yeah.
So we should decide that and give income support. Now give big advantage of Aadhaar and all this stuff and the new DBTs, direct benefit transfer. Technically, if you identify the people you want to support, instantaneously money can flow to their accounts. And I would give it to the woman in the household, not to the man. Because I think women will use their money more. Because when you say poor, a husband is poor, the wife is poor, the family is poor, there's a bigger danger that if the money just goes into the man.
How do we support in a country like India?
Look, you're supporting freebies today in so many things. I mean, you're supporting, today, for example, as far as the central government is concerned, massive subsidy on fertilizers. I mean, fertilizer prices have not changed since 1991 or something like that. Okay, although the price of the wheat and rice has gone up.
Yeah.
So huge increase in subsidy burden, big increase in the food subsidy, which now goes through this system. 800 million people are getting free food. Most states are giving practically free electricity to farmers and to poorer households. So, the total amount of subsidies where prices are reduced is quite large.
This may help people who are into some kind of businesses, be it small businesses or medium scale businesses. But I'm talking about people who are below suppose people who are earning below 12,000 a month.
I agree, but what I'm saying is, let's be very clear. Let's decide what is the level of earning at which India as a country, Bharat, should give income support. Now you can decide what that level is. Okay, if you believe that, let's say, for anybody whose income is 10,000 rupees a month, we should give a subsidy of so much. Identify the people. It won't be possible to identify 100%, but you'll be able to identify 97%.
Is it possible in a country like India?
Why not? Because you're giving them food. I mean, if you make a list of all the people to whom you're giving food, free 5 kg of food, you have their Aadhaar numbers.
That happens during the time of elections.
No, the free food thing has been
I'm not talking about free food. I'm talking about money.
But that continues
distribution.
also. They don't, it becomes patchy. Announcements are made. I'm only saying the technical capacity to transfer money is possible. No question about it.
Okay.
I mean, by the way, no politician has actually said that this is the logic. I mean, many politicians have said we should have a minimum income level. But
yeah.
none of them have said that we should remove the other subsidies.
Yeah.
So then you're just saying another freebie.
Did the government in power today, did they contacted you regarding the policy in last few years?
No, but look, I'm retired. I'm not looking for being consulted. I'm enjoying myself. So no, the short answer is, when I have something to say, I publish it in the odd paper.
Okay. Articles.
So my views are known, and if anyone wants to, and I'm sure there are enough people internally within the government who are aware of these things.
What do you think about the farm laws?
I've said this many times. In my view, I think the farm laws were the right thing to do, in the sense that we need to get away from this public purchase monopoly and allow the private sector to come in. I feel that it was done, we were recommending this when we were in the UPA.
Yeah.
But the difference was, at that time, our perception was that this is agriculture, and agriculture is a state subject. So we would always urge the state governments, ke aap kar do. Okay? And of course, they wouldn't do it. What happened with the farm laws is that the present government, in that period, they came to the conclusion, and I'm not a legal expert, they said there's no constitutional bar because this is not agriculture, this is marketing.
This is marketing, okay.
So they said it's within our power. And I'm prepared to accept that, that's not an unreasonable thing. But then they took the view, this has been discussed enough, and we're now going to do it, and they did it by ordinance. Now, that I think is not the right thing to do, because, in my view, this is a farmer-related thing, especially
Exactly,
in Punjab, Haryana, UP,
UP,
West
yeah.
UP. I mean, they feel that it's been discussed and rejected. So I think what should have been done is that, and maybe I think that should even be done now, that you should, personally, I think the best thing would be to have a private members bill.
Okay.
So the government would find it very difficult to take this step. But have a private members bill. Okay, this is what we should do.
What is private members bill?
It's not a government bill, but a private member. Any private member
Okay.
can introduce a bill.
Okay.
Okay, and the whole thing would be there, and you can send it to a select committee. Now, if you send it to a select committee, the select committee could invite farmer interests from different states. Many distinguished agricultural economists have made this point that the idea that we'll get a farm prosperity without a corporate private involvement is a mistake, because
Okay.
marketing, as you know in your business also, marketing requires something more
Right.
than just farmers.
Right.
Now, I think farmers argue that the example of Amul, which is a huge success,
Yeah.
suggests that we can do it through cooperatives. But other than Amul, it hasn't worked anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, so now the question
Amul
is,
was the exceptional case. Yeah.
I think Varghese, who organized it,
Yeah.
did a fantastic job. And there's no doubt about that in my mind. But whatever it is, I mean, Amul nobody's preventing farmer cooperatives. But what I would say is that if you want to bring in some corporate guys, there's nothing wrong with farmers saying, we will do a cooperative and we'll compete against these fellows. It is possible. If
But-
you look at where are the states, what are the crops that have experienced the fastest growth, they're not crops that are bought under MSP.
Okay.
I mean, horticulture, floriculture, fishing, fisheries, livestock, egg production, all of these have flourished. Rice and wheat have only grown at 2%, 3%. So the notion that without MSP you can't flourish is just wrong.
But do you think could the same reform have succeeded if the government had spent more time with farmers?
But देखो, in my
And
view, I
building
can't
trust
say
first.
I can't say whether it would have succeeded or not, because that's a political. You
Okay.
never know. You never know what political forces are at work. But as a general rule, I would say that if you want to sell a reform about which people have doubts, you need to get them involved.
Okay.
And you need to have a discussion. And the discussion can be public. Now, what I'm suggesting, I know that Ashok Gulati, who's an extremely well-known agricultural economist, also Ramesh Chand, who was the member of NITI Aayog until recently, in charge of agriculture, both of them feel that the farm laws were good laws. So why don't we get the government could easily give a signal to some private member that, look, if you introduce this as a private member's bill, we will not oppose it. Let's send it to select committee. Let it go to select committee. Now, if in the select committee, and invite farmers and get their views.
Get their views, yeah.
And at least we'll have a debate. Today what has happened is it become untouchable.
Right.
And now, is it going to remain untouchable while we reach Viksit Bharat? That would be very odd.
So, but if those reforms had worked as planned, how would life have been different for farmers?
Well, my view is that it would have introduced a much greater competitive factor in, let's say, producing marketing for high quality agricultural goods. Look, at the moment, I mean, it's my personal view, I can't prove this, the FCI as a government monopoly is an unbelievably inefficient organization.
FCI is?
Food Corporation.
Food Corporation. Okay.
Look, it's well known,
Yeah.
and people will tell you that, before you sell your wheat or rice,
Yeah.
you put in 5 liters of water into the sack, and its weight that becomes that much heavier, and you're being paid by weight. Now, this is what people say. Whether it's true or not, I can't judge. But you cannot imagine that we will have become Viksit and continue with this system of marketing, which is only there for wheat and rice.
Wheat and rice, yeah.
It's not there for anything else. I mean, mangoes are being sold without an MSP, and they're doing quite well.
But what was the main reason? Why did the reform face so much resistance?
That I can't say because I'm not a politician.
No, I just want to know your perspective.
No, I don't. I mean,
Okay.
you can't have a perspective unless you first engage with the farmers. And I'm sure that the farmers genuinely felt. I'll tell you my feeling. Farmers did not believe that we were going to keep the MSP system going.
Acha.
I think they had a fear that they will first introduce this private sector and then they will abolish the MSP. Okay. I know there are some people who think we should abolish the MSP. That's a different matter. That was not the idea. The farm laws would say the MSP will stay, but let these guys come in and compete. And I think there's nothing. Look, let's take a simple thing. Hard wheat. If you want to make pasta, it's the hard wheat that is useful, not the soft wheat. Now, if you allow the private sector, they would introduce a marketing where, depending on the quality of the wheat, a premium would be given for a better wheat.
Better wheat.
That is not there in the present system.
Right,
There's just one
correct.
price. So if it's one price, it's better to produce the cheapest, worst quality of wheat and adulterate it if you can, and no point whatsoever in producing good quality wheat.
So if you had been involved in this from the beginning, how would you have approached these reforms differently?
And you mean the farm law reforms?
Yeah.
Well,
Maybe but let's talk about farm law, labor law, then agriculture law.
in all of these, my view has always been, first of all, I was involved during the UPA government.
Yeah, I know.
And politically, I fear that they didn't feel they were in a position
Okay.
to do anything on either farm laws or labor laws. I think the previous government, as I told you, they didn't think legally that it was their business. So we were continually saying to the governments, bring in the private sector. But the governments were not, state governments were not interested. I do believe, by the way, in many of these things, we need much more economic involvement at the state government level.
Okay.
Most state governments do not talk to economic experts. Most economic experts only want to talk to the central government.
Central government.
This, I think, is a mistake because as states become very different, their challenges are very different. I feel that many, many more economists in India should focus on reforms which are state government
State
issues.
government,
I mean, the whole reform on the urban side is actually a state government area.
Then why it is
Central
not happening?
I mean, these things just institutionally, they take time to evolve.
Okay.
I mean, when I was deputy chairman of the Planning Commission, I said to each state government that, look, you should produce a state development program for your state
Okay.
and get some of the local research institutions to do it. Don't get your ministries to do it. Because, ministries just produce a whole lot of government programs. It's not very useful. And we even said that we'll give 20 lakhs to each state if they would choose research institutions to do it. Some states did, and we got some quite interesting stuff. But for the majority of states, there weren't any local research institutions. So I think we underestimate the lack of capacity or quality. Now, mind you, state governments can always get other consultants and so on to do work for them. And maybe I think they're doing some of that now. But in those days,
how
it
can we
wasn't.
change this for future? Maybe let's talk about next 10
Well, I think
years.
every state government should have a NITI Aayog. I would have, in the old days, I'd have said they have a planning department, okay? But a planning department just looks at government programs. That's not the name of the game. You need somebody saying, look, all our government programs are now outdated. No ministry, no planning department will do that. But in India, we used to use the Planning Commission to evolve new ideas, like on public-private partnership and so on. Today, in the center, we've got NITI Aayog.
NITI
okay?
Aayog, yeah.
Every state should have a parallel NITI Aayog. Produce some government jobs, assign some sensible people, bring in consultants and so on. After all, a state like UP, I mean, if UP was a separate country, it would be the, I don't know, fourth largest country in the world. So,
Yeah.
and there are a lot of research institutions in UP, in Lucknow, Banaras, etc.
Okay.
If UP were to set up a NITI Aayog, and there are enough people from UP around the world, they could set up fellowships that chaps in universities abroad come and tell us what to do in UP. It would be quite easy to do. The same thing would be true of Punjab. I mean, there are
Okay.
lots and lots of people.
What steps can we take now?
We meaning who?
If someone from government is listening this.
Well, I don't know if some... No, I'll tell you, I don't think the central government can do very much. But if there is anybody from a state government
Yeah.
who's listening to this podcast, then I would very strongly urge that they should set up a kind of a NITI Aayog at the state level. Of course,
state
NITI
level.
is Institution for Transforming India, so they have to call it something else, Aayog, transforming the state or whatever.
Okay.
And that should be staffed by a few senior and responsible civil servants who are aware of what the state has to do. That should have some experts, engineers as well as economists, and should also invite people from the state or interested in the state who are working abroad and are interested in doing something for the state. Let them come for 6 months, 1 year, 3 months, 2 months, whatever it is. Out of that will come some thinking. And that thinking would give the chief minister a document saying, okay, this is what you've been doing. I think you need to rethink your strategy and do the following. Now, they may not get it right, they may get it wrong, but at least there'll be a discussion.
Correct. Okay, sir. So I want to go back to November 2016. Dr. Manmohan Singh rarely spoke strongly in public. But on demonetization, he was very clear. He said it could seriously hurt the economy, right? And even called it as a monumental management failure. So why was he so convinced so early that this would not work?
It would have been good if you had asked him that question directly, but I can tell you what his... Because I think...
you're very close to him, so I'm sure you must
when you're
have some
talking
idea.
about a former prime minister,
Yeah.
if I don't want to add or detract anything from what he said,
Yeah.
but I tell you what I think was at the back of his mind. I think his view was that two things. A, that the decision to suddenly demonetize, in the sense that the notes become valueless with effect from midnight,
Yeah.
created a huge disruption. I mean, look, something which somebody like you would understand is that suppose you were traveling in UP from your home state, which is Rajasthan, and you didn't have, you normally wouldn't have 1 rupee, you'd have a few 1,000 rupee notes or 500 rupee note, and so on. And you'd have a credit card or a debit card, okay? You would suddenly find that you have your money is worthless, okay? And secondly, your debit card wouldn't work in the ATM because the ATM doesn't have enough notes.
Exactly, yeah.
And there was not enough warning.
Yeah.
So can you be stranded for 5 days without any money? And what would you do? I mean, if you had to get a taxi from A to B, you wouldn't be able to do it. Quite apart from the poor fellows who came from abroad, any number of tourists who came thinking that we really love India and suddenly find that they're without any money, or the money they have is... Now, if you had a system which said that this money is useless, but you can change it to the new money seamlessly within 2 hours, there's not a problem.
Yeah.
But that was not the case.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people were just not able to. Now, tourists and all, they even get credit. It's not a problem and so on. But, an ordinary person, for example, who's buying and selling something and kind of selling it in the market, he can't transact.
Yeah.
And he can also get credit, but he gets credit at very high interest rates, 20%, 30%, and so on. So that was the issue, the disruption.
So that was the main issue?
I think the principal objection could have been, look, demonetization we have done earlier, and demonetization is not something that can't be done.
Okay.
The only thing is if you have enough time to prepare for it. I mean, for example, if you
What
were
do you mean when you say earlier?
I think there was a demonetization done in the 70s also,
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't remember exactly,
Hmm.
but it worked off. It was quite okay. There are several reasons that are given, and there were many reasons that were given for this one.
Hmm.
That counterfeit notes.
Yeah, counterfeit notes. Yeah.
The problem with, I mean, look, as it turned out, then there were almost no counterfeit notes were discovered. So that is also a. But I think the dominant concern is not that. The dominant concern is that when you demonetize, it's the government that bears the cost of
Yeah.
printing new notes, right?
Yeah.
Therefore, the only objection you can have is disruption.
Hmm.
You can, if you've been collecting a huge amount of black money, you can have a problem because how do you convert crores that you can't explain? Okay,
Correct.
but I don't think anybody is shedding any tears for that group. The sympathy was really ordinary people who might have found their business or their daily life disrupted for several days.
But why were small businesses, farmer and daily wage worker affected more than the large companies?
Well, look, very simple. I mean, if there's a shortage of cash and you're on, first of all, if you're on daily wage,
Yeah.
then you're working in the informal part of the economy. If the informal part of the economy is choked off, then you don't get any business. If you're employed by a company which is relying on whatever its normal stock of money is, and they find they can't convert the notes because there's a 3-day wait in the public sector bank, then you don't get your salary. So what do you do if you suddenly don't get your salary?
Right.
Well, you could technically argue that I'll take it on credit, and some people would have some credit. You pay the vegetable seller a little bit later, but the implicit interest rate that they charge is quite high.
Right. So it's been almost 10 years. Looking back, do you still believe demonetization was the wrong decision?
Well, demonetization itself cannot be called a right or wrong decision. The question really is, could it have been done differently?
Okay,
I mean,
the
for
way
example,
it was implemented.
Yes. I mean, look, Raghuram Rajan, according to what I read in the newspapers, he actually recommended to the government that, look,
Yeah.
if you want to do it, please prepare a little bit more. And if you do enough, give us enough time for preparation, we'll be able to do it seamlessly. That's what he said. And that's, I think,
So what was the reason? Why did it happen overnight?
that I can't say because I wasn't in government. You have to
Okay.
ask others.
How did you think about writing backstage?
Well, I just felt that I'd been very lucky in seeing a transition, a period when the country was going through a way of getting out of the rut it had got into in the 1970s. And it actually did succeed in the sense it took longer. In the 80s, as I said, Rajiv Gandhi had these ideas, wasn't able to implement them, ran into the Bofors problem and so on. In the 90s, then we had this terrific burst of activity, Manmohan Singh under Narasimha Rao, big change, and the country began to change and liberalize. And I thought that during the 2000s, the country demonstrated that it was ready for change, and its international standing also improved. I also thought it was impressive that in successive governments, although the change was brought about in 1991, successive governments continued with the change, although with a little bit of their own personal touch. And to me, the message of India, that India changed under a coalition government headed by Narasimha Rao, the United Front, which was a different combination, continued. The NDA under Vajpayee also continued on the economic front, not ideally, but by and large, in a longer term trend, it continued. Then you had the UPA, which had a different kind of approach, but also made some significant progress. I don't cover the present NDA government, but I would say that there is significant continuity, that anything that was good was being carried through. I think we're now facing a much more challenging situation.
Okay.
New challenges have emerged. We discussed that. Are we going to go back into the control regime,
Yeah.
or are we going to manage these challenges? It's a major challenge, okay? So I think this is a story that needs to be told, because I realized that, younger people had no idea what kind of a world their parents lived in.
Yeah.
I mean, look, when I got a Rhodes Scholarship in St. Stephen's College, my parents had no telephone at home.
Yeah.
So for me, it was a huge jump up. I had to take a bus all the way from St. Stephen's College to Lajpat Nagar in order to tell my father that I've got the Rhodes Scholarship, because he didn't have telephone at home.
So, if the government asked you today, what one thing we should remove immediately to make it easier for smaller businesses in India?
I would say, I've said this before, I approve of the thrust that is being given on ease of doing business and ease of living. Now, Rajiv Gauba, who used to be cabinet secretary,
Okay.
who is now a member of the NITI Aayog, and he's continued, although the rest of the membership has changed. He headed a committee on how to get rid of liberalizing controls. Okay? And I think that committee included Manish Sabarwal, who had done a lot of work on how many unnecessary controls we have. Now, I feel that if the government were to simply say, as an urgent priority in the next 3 months, we will implement 100% of this, it would be a terrific achievement. What has happened, though, is less than that. I mean, Gauba's committee, I have not read the report. It's unfortunate the report has not been made public.
Okay.
But what the newspapers have said is that we had issued over the last several years 709 quality control orders, which meant that if an ordinary firm wanted to import something from somewhere, you had to have it certified that this person's production is of good enough quality. And that certification would be done by some babu from the Bureau of Industrial Standards. So if I'm running a small company and I said, look, this is the guy who's producing the right kind of cement, not cement, aluminium or copper or whatever, and it's a good price and just what I need, I would have to first make sure that the BIS would give them a quality control certification. It became an indirect form of license permit Raj, that's all. Okay? He has said that 709 of these should be got rid of.
Absolutely right. There's so many compliances.
Only 109 have been got rid of. Now, it's very good that 109 have been got rid of. But, Gauba, as cabinet secretary, held the highest rank in the bureaucracy. His committee included experts from outside and inside. If they have pronounced get rid of it, what worthy gentleman in the government has a second opinion that's worth listening to?
So why are we delaying decisions?
That I can't answer. That's for you guys to find out.
I mean, you have seen the governments here into this industry from last 30, 40 years.
I don't
We have seen
find
a lot.
enough. I don't find enough, if you like, public pressure of a positive kind. I mean, I think if the public were to compliment the government that you set up this committee is wonderful. The committee has made this recommendation. That's wonderful. Why is only 1/7 of this being done?
Then, yeah.
Then I think maybe some message will go, okay, bhai karo, why is it not happening?
So what's the way?
Huh?
What's the way? How can...
I think you
Yeah.
and other business guys and the public should urge the government to do this. That's the only way.
I mean, all the MSMEs, the small business people are trying to get rid of these compliances because these are unnecessary compliances which are of no use for any...
I have seen lists of compliances that India has to do which are 4 to 5 times more than, let's say, Southeast Asia.
Okay.
I don't understand why for each of these businesses, why doesn't your MSME group, if you must be a member of them, why don't you make a list of certain businesses and indicate number of Indian compliances and number of Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, Turkey, let's say, and Indonesia. And just show the government each of these countries is much richer than us.
Yeah.
Why the hell are we burdening our people if they're not?
Exactly, because we talk about ease of doing business and
No, you're absolutely right. But what
yeah.
I mean is, you cannot just ask why it's not. In a constructive way, you should interact with the ministries concerned and say why. And the answer will be that the bureaucracy that exercises these controls has a very strong vested interest in continuing to exercise them. There's no other reason.
when government create more rules, the intention is usually to improve quality or protect consumers.
Sorry, when you say government, what do you mean?
When government create more rules, I mean rules mean, when I'm saying rules means compliances.
Well,
It is usually to create
it should be for consumers.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That was the main point of Gauba. What Gauba said was that quality control is important to protect consumers. For example, if you are going to use a paint on a toy, it should not be a lead-based paint. Because a child might bite into the toy and lead poisoning happens.
Yeah.
But if it's an intermediate product which goes into another product, it's the producer who has the biggest interest in making sure that this product is good. The consumer is going to judge from the product, the final product.
Final product, right.
Therefore, his view was there is no case, none, for a quality control on either a capital good or a machine or something that is fitted into a product. No need. The only reason it's put in is somebody wants to exercise control.
So, what do you think about our Prime Minister, Narendra Modi?
He is a very popular Prime Minister, obviously. I mean,
What else?
no, I never comment on a current existing. I wouldn't give you a comment on either a Prime Minister or a leader of the opposition or
Okay.
leader of any political party or Chief Minister. One of the points about viewing myself as non-political.
Last but not the least, after everything you have seen, the successes, the crisis, the reform, what has surprised you most about India?
Well, I think two, 3 things I would like to say. Number one, most politicians underestimate what India can do. Because whenever you try to do something, some vested interest gets hurt. The people who benefit are the people who would succeed in the new environment. Okay, but they're not there.
Yeah.
Because until you change the environment, they don't emerge. And most politicians massively underestimate that if they bring about change, within 10 years, there'll be a lot of people who will benefit from the change.
From the change, yeah.
Whereas when you try to make a change, it's the people who are hurt who actually protest. So this is the most important thing. Number 2, if you decide to make the change, a lot of people will tell you, no, we won't be able to succeed, etc.
Yeah.
They're all wrong. Because we'll do much better than most people think. Give the people a chance. That's the third thing. Fourth thing, and this is very important, I think, is that, there's a lot of talent in the country. And in the older system, it didn't surface. I mean, let's look at cricket, which is not my normal subject. I mean, who would have thought that a 15-year-old kid,
yeah.
Suryavanshi, would do as well as he's doing? And he's not from any of your leading schools. He comes from some small place in Bihar.
Exactly.
So the fact of the matter is that if you ran a system that allowed these kind of people to demonstrate their skills, you will be surprised. In the old system, they were all former Rajas and Maharajas and Nawab of Pataudi and half a dozen people in Bombay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, frankly, I think that is the biggest news that we should think of. And you need a system which is competitive. That's the crux of it. I mean, trust the system, promote competition. And competition means more people getting into the act, not less.
Yeah. more people getting chance.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I totally agree with you, sir. Okay, I think we have covered a lot today. And is there something important that you feel we didn't touch upon?
No, I think you've covered a lot of ground.
Okay.
You know.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
having
much.
me.